Hi and welcome back to the Drawing Database. Professor Marc Leone here, and we're going to look at, spend 15 minutes today with the wonderful drawings of the French Barbizon School of Realism, Jean-Francois Millet, born in 1814 and died in 1875. Obviously, through my bad French accent, we do know that he is French, and a wonderful artist, a peasant, a trained artist, but lived out in the countryside, primarily in France, and painted the countryside, the farmers, the workers of that generation, of that era in the 19th, middle and late 19th century. So it was not the bourgeoisie, but it was more of the proletariat, or the hardworking middle class, farm working class, if you will. And we'll take a look at those drawings. So the first drawing I thought we'd start off with is a nude. And you see more of a kind of a classical, relaxed figure pose here in charcoal, and you get a very nice situation here with, I think, just generally overall wonderful lighting. You get a situation here with beautiful mark making that we see in the background, hatched marks, which I think is a really kind of handsome look that I've been promoting for a while. And then you also get with Millet here in the drawings, which I think is a very, again, a traditional kind of technique, the stumping or the smoothing out of the initial texture here, right? You see that with the kind of blended areas, and then on top you get these hatched, beautiful lines that we see. Contouring, some contouring across the model. He leaves the light alone. You can see where he's erased that out. So he might have put down an initial tonality and then come back and erase these tones out. We see the coarse shadow here, of course, and deep tones. Take a look at the impressionist type hands. You know, we've been talking about that in some of the long poses that I've been doing. There's no need to have it so completely structured out unless there's a stylistic reason that you want. And so the occlusion of these little nice coarse shadow darks with the head turned to the side make this a really masterful kind of drawing, and a sensual drawing, a relaxed drawing, and one that gets a heightened degree of realism with a very loose kinds of means to it. Here we see an ideational sketch for a painting, one of my favorite paintings, kind of a nighttime scene driving away crows and birds with torches. We have farmers here, and it is a very loose gestural sketch in charcoal and also white chalk here. We get the charcoal here, and the figures are gestural. They're out of his imagination. You're going to see that quite often with Millet's work. You'll see him draw ideationally or out of his head quite a bit, and you can tell the difference between that and sometimes the observational drawing, and sometimes you can't. But I love the beautiful rhythmic movement of the gestural marks that we get with Millet's work, and then you get the charcoal, the additive, and the white and dark charcoal, and then you get these subtractive marks with the eraser too as well. So the beginning of our little 15-minute study here of his au revoir, and also of his ideas. Again, you'll see all of these from the countryside or out on the farm or pasture. Here we see a lovely head study of a female. Obviously could be his wife. I don't know exactly the title. Not important to me. But in what looks to be charcoal, or could be graphite, but just a simple control of the head structure here, kind of leaning, down this way. We see the eye line, nose line, mouth line, and base kind of skull, ear kicked back a little bit in there. There we go. And I think, just a good control overall of value. Simple kind of rendering. It's about 3 tones of value: a dark, a light, and kind of this medium tone that we see maybe right in through there that gets blended a little bit in terms of just value usage, and just lovely simplicity of the folds, of almost effortless, but yet we still get a wonderful likeness of this particular youngish woman in a relaxed kind of downward, portrait pose. Here we see a milliner, looks like churning perhaps butter. Again, in a pastoral farm setting, we see what's probably sacks of flour and other utensils, jars and vases. A little dog or cat down here at the side of the woman here with her clogs, and obviously the butter churn. Probably from imagination. Lovely study. Could be a study for an etching. But a controlled drawing from the imagination. Softer kind of drawing with not, a heavy kind of etched line. So you see very soft control of the drawing utensil. He lit it a little bit from the top. And also from the front to the left here, so we can see the cast shadow. That's kind of the telltale shadow for us right in through there. But lovely control of anatomy in the form, very developed form in through the brachioradialis and the flexors underneath, so it gives this woman a bit of bulk overall. So she is a working class woman with probably a degree of hopefully integrity and working in her craft here, head tilted down in a kind of generalized expression too as well. So we can probably assume that this drawing is made from imagination. Here we see a lovely quick study of a farm girl sleeping. We see the sweep of the light source coming from the top right down, so we see her in shadow on the left side and kind of push back a little bit. I love the quick cross contouring lines that we start to get. This is really telltale of cross contouring. You want to try to get that into your drawings pretty quickly and pretty early. The lovely control of the waist as it comes down, curves over, and then the stretch of the fabric to secure the breasts that are gently touching the bed or the ground, and then of course the area where the elbow is, and he put some nice darks there where this touches the implied ground, and we overlap here. Notice this nice rich dark where the head touches. Anywhere you have strong touches or stress on the figure, the model, or clothing or fabric, you want to emphasize that with dark. Whether it's in light or not, you need to emphasize that in darker tone and line as well. I love the very almost effortless gesture of the outside of the hand post, probably done from life. We have a study of some everyday farming goats. I'm assuming they're alive and resting and certainly not dead. Again, great control of the charcoal tool, really more incisive here, sharper point that he's getting to. I love the rhythm that he turns some of the forms over and around. Take a look at how he's using that structure, turning the neck into that shoulder scapula area. Underneath with a nice dark, rich dark as it sits onto the pasture grass. In through there, nice control of the forms of the legs. Very economical, sits the figure down of the goat onto some grass. Good skull structure, and through their head pointed out. Again that way, and some nice dark to sit both of the goats down. And then this lovely sketch. Probably had to do these pretty rushed, probably from live, because I'm sure the goats were relaxed. And to get the goats in this position, we can assume then that this was on his farm. I love the slight indication of the turn of the form of the top of the rib cage, sitting down, and then the darker head here of the goat to emphasize the foreshortening, but the head in front of the rest of the body. See how the body fades out in terms of light, and the head becomes darker, and it comes forward to us, and this pushes back. So when you have a figure, or in this case a goat, you have foreshortening, and even if you don't have foreshortening, focal point's probably going to be at the head more dark in detail. Overall, for the most part, is lovely study. This is a fascinating drawing. It reminds me a little of Seurat. If you don't know Seurat, you will soon. I'll do a video 15 minutes with Seurat. This reminds me to do one, which is nice. Here we have a more overall mass charcoal tone. We have the charcoal paper. You can see the striations of the lines, and then these linear little striations. You can tell it's a more ribbed paper, which works well on more finished charcoal type studies. The overall tonality probably rubbed on with a cloth or maybe a charcoal stick of some sort all the way out through the entire composition. And then we see him laying in probably lightly with line. Some of the positions of the figures looks like a woman here sewing. And we don't really know what this figure is here. That could be just a block, and it looks a little generic, so he may not have finished it. It could be just for an idea. But we see a woman, I imagine, sewing, sitting at a chair in two-point perspective there. And then the lovely control of just touches of line, and then, of course, the erasing of line. So, you know, tonal drawing, and then erasing back with the eraser in these areas of the figures in the model give us a sensation of a glowing kind of light really, really quickly. There's a lot of information here and a very economical kinds of means of drawing, which I encourage you to try to improve upon and emulate with additive, subtractive kinds of processes that this includes. This drawing is another one like the one I just showed you, a little bit different style. I love the little staccato lines that come all over in different directions, and he really sublimates detail for night lighting, so we get silhouettes of the farmer here and the donkey. It's kind of reminiscent of obviously the Christian story of the birth of Jesus. Could be right after it. Could be kind of a Joseph and Mary in the Jesus figure. Notice how the edges of everything are very soft with the male and the female here, and the donkey in the background. You know, lots of tip drawing on the tip here, but then probably a smoothed down initial texture on some lighter sort of beige paper. So we really get a sense of dusk and the sun going down rapidly. Maybe there's even a lake out here with some other reflections. And then lastly, and importantly, we know where the focal point is of the drawing. Two or three reasons why I think it's pretty obvious in this narrated kind of idea is the height of Mary, her silhouette strongly against this beautiful sort of composition that comes down right and over this way. She's at the height of it. We're surrounded by all this wonderful darkness, and then we get, of course, the focal point is Mary, or the woman and the child, and they're a little bit more detailed there, aren't they, too? So there's a little bit more incisive cut line. Let's go a little higher so we can see that. So you can see them come out a little bit more in grand detail with an economy of means, that we get a very powerful atmosphere. I'll call it atmospheric gestural drawing with this particular work in charcoal. Here we see an idea, something like the gleaners or wheat pickers, if you will, or farmhand workers, and we see this lovely idea of a almost noon kind of lit light source coming from the top. So they're all underlit, which he emphasizes greatly. Probably a sketch from imagination, I'm guessing. It could be from life, but everything is lit from the top, so underneath a little bit, and then slightly from the left, because we get the right side shadow. I love these figures down below, the repetition of these figures, and then the taller figure, look how she's silhouetted against this wonderful kind of charcoal, or could be graphite darkened through here. The gesture of the cows behind, and then the males tossing hay up to the very top. I wouldn't want to fall off there, but it seems they know what they're doing, right? So everything is emphasized here compositionally, right? And we get this turn and lean over through here, and then these lead us up and over, back around, back to the buttock. Nothing is stiff. Nothing is too overplayed. It's a very much kind of staid, everyday scene of French agricultural life, and a beautiful capturing of the image. It's only thing I might suggest is why he didn't put maybe some clouds moving in the background, but that might have ruined the overall kind of effect of the afternoon kind of light. Otherwise, gorgeous. Here we have what looks to be a pastoral farm girl, a little bit more formal perhaps in the what could be an umbrella, could be a painter, or somebody walking far to carry milk or a pail of some sort that could relax from the sun. We have her just slightly bent over in shadow here, which he liked to put shadows in face quite a bit. So we have the central figure here compositionally. Looks like to be in charcoal with mostly additive. Notice how gestural it is. Look at the beautiful action. This could be an idea from a painting, so this could be maybe mostly out of his head. Maybe the figure wasn't. She seems fairly generic. So we have this strong central figure. He leans her over just a bit to give her some movement. We get this double kind of diagonal here, and then here up. He pulls us back with the clouds and the atmosphere here, and then emphasizes that over again with the angle of this kind of secondary little hill, and then we have these little wonderful little goats grazing, and then more goats out to the side pulling back this way, pointing up to her, and then we get emphasis of a flatter shadow. And then notice this just wonderful gestural technique of grass patches and manure and whatever's out there on the farm. And what we don't get is the scent of being on a farm. And if you've ever spent time on pasture and a farm, you get that pretty quick, but you get used to it. Lovely, another beautiful study by Millet. Here we have what seems to be a pastel drawing of a gleaner or a planter, if you will, a theme that he visited many times. We see this beautiful control of the pastel color. People are going to respond to that, but also the simplified value. Notice how silhouetted these figures are and simply gestured in, the hay bale or some kind of tower with a little bit of trees, etc. The beautiful control of the birds in afternoon, dusk, and this beautiful movement of the clouds coming over, and I love the sun coming through to pull us back over and really get to him. He's our main story here. Farmhand working proudly the farm, seeding so maybe it's early spring here, seeding the ground for crops, and so he's pulled in this direction. And again, the ground, the loose control, the painterly control, the pastel pulls us in this direction, and then the background figures, what do you notice, turn the other way here. So we get moving back to him. So he pulls us in this direction forcefully, and then the composition pulls us back here. A beautiful diagonal. So he takes this diagonal idea, brings it all the way back. So we see this back here, and then we come back over. So those kinds of things you want to pay attention to compositionally. And again, notice the very gestural quality of the model, the figure here, which leads me to believe again, this is another drawing out of the head for probably a preparatory drawing for a painting. And I love the control of the subtle color, a little bit of afternoon blue still hanging on, but mostly evening, kind of pinkish tones there. And here we have another pastoral scene of sheathing or shaving sheep, lamb skin, the coating off. You can see the sheep or goat tied up here, probably sheep, huh? And so they can sheathe off the wool for cloth making. And again, another gestural, compositional study, and very soft lining. Notice both of the figures are not the main action here because they're in shadow. We see the lit source of the lamb laid down and held relatively gently as the woman shears off and looks like very difficult work there with a small, hopefully very sharp knife. We see some lovely movement in the gesture of the trees. It's just absolutely gorgeous. This turns and moves, a little wind blowing, and then he gives us a little open sky in through here. They're kind of at the side of perhaps a barn or a house, and he breaks up the composition with this little ladder and the fence posted here, and then sheep waiting their turn for sheathing, and just a lovely, nice shadow in here. Very controlled, soft drawing, nothing harsh. And again, illuminating through natural means the pastoral everyday life of a farm family, perhaps husband and wife working in tandem. There's a lot of honor, I think, in that. And you can contrast that with the romanticism that was going on during the day with Delacroix and Géricault, and Rococo that was a little bit earlier that celebrated a more robust bourgeois or portraiture, David with neoclassicism of the most elite and powerful. Here was a celebration of the less powerful but no less important peasants and workers of the French farm and countryside. In here we'll leave off with our final drawing, a wonderful wheelbarrow study of a man leaning over. It reminds us a little bit of Van Gogh's work, but with more dexterity, I think, overall in terms of his drawing technique. Hopefully this will get you excited to go see Millet's paintings as well, and you can see them in major museums throughout the world, but also certainly at the Museum d'Orsay in Paris. and other French museums. We get this wonderful overhang of kind of what this brushy vine stuff that really moves the composition this way, back around to the figure, and then he moves the other way, doesn't he, back in. So there's this lovely spatial thing that's going on. The wheelbarrow emphasizes that coming in. Also the shadow that he lights, and the figure is lit from the left, the upper right, hello, and in front of us a little bit, so over here and then over and through, so we get those shadows working for us. But I love the interplay of, again, of that movement, of that circular form, again, through here and around, and then he tucks back. You think we want to go out the composition, but no, we tuck back in and we go over. Again, here, hiding the face and making the figures anonymous. It's not so much about the figure, is it, or who that individual is, rather than the idea of what that individual is and what that individual is doing for his sustenance and for a living, and also feeding the bourgeois and the wealthy as well. So there's a I think a fairly determined political statement in all of this as well. I didn't want to get deep into that, but I think there's an undertone of being a peasant, being proud, of being a worker, and in being also an accomplished artist, which was more unusual. Usually they were found in the cities and usually in Paris. And so this is something different that we don't see as often, and that's why I love Millet, not only for his craftsmanship, but also his vigor and his attitude towards a robust, kind of earthy, less messy or fussy lifestyle, if you will. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.